Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of the Literacy Center of Expertise podcast presented by the Immigrant Education Society in Calgary, Alberta. I'm your host, Jeremy Wilson. On today's show, we will be joined by Donna Clark, our lead here at the Literacy Center, as well as our special guest today, Vanessa Lent, a Link instructor and curriculum developer at the Immigrant Services Association of Nova Scotia in Halifax. And she'll be telling us today about a strategy-focused curriculum for literacy learners. So first, I'd like to welcome Donna Clark. Hi, Donna.
Hi, Jeremy. Happy to be here.
Welcome. And Donna, could you introduce our guest today?
Of course. So Vanessa Lent holds a Master's of Education in Curriculum Studies from Mount Saint Vincent University. She's worked at Immigrant Services Association of Nova Scotia, or ISANS, for over 5 years as an instructor and curriculum developer. Her current research interests include applications of universal design for learning to literacy curriculum design and increasing EAL learner autonomy through life writing and constructions of citizenship in Canadian textual production. As well as that, Vanessa left out of her bio that she was the facilitator and often is the facilitator for the TELS course, Teaching English to Literacy Learners through ISANS. And Jeremy and I were very lucky to have taken this course last semester, and I would highly recommend it. And she wrote great comments and had lots of great ideas and things to share with us. So welcome, Vanessa.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here with you guys today.
Awesome. So could you tell us about the project that you worked on that we're going to talk about today, Vanessa?
Absolutely. So, one of the recent curriculum projects I did was working on a strategy-focused curriculum for our literacy learners. This came out of a need for a formalized or even semi-formalized literacy curriculum. At ISANS, we previously had a really strong but quite small literacy program where the instructors worked together, but there weren't a lot of formalized sort of curricula to follow. So what I did was I combined what we had been doing over 20 years at ISANS with our literacy learners into something formalized. And one of the documents that I really drew on that helped me do that was the ESL for All Literacy Learners, or ESL for All, from the CCLB that came out a couple years ago. And they have a really robust section of strategies for literacy learners in their document there. So that was one of the sort of backbones of the curriculum that I developed.
That is an awesome document and really necessary. I was so happy when it came out. So, can you tell us sort of like how you're using that and what exactly does curriculum design for literacy learners look like?
Ooh, yes, that's a very good question. There wasn't a lot of precedent that I could find. So I guess I'll begin by going through sort of the reasoning that we needed this curriculum was that when our program shifted from using the older literacy document, ESL for Literacy Learners, from the 2000s, to the new document, we had based our entire program on that older document. And when we needed to shift to the new one, we found that there was some details missing that we really, really needed because of our particular learner demographic at ISANS. We have quite a few learners who are within the 1L level because of various reasons. And what the old document had was it had broken down the phase one into 3 separate initial, developing, and adequate levels. And that distinction really formed the backbone of our literacy program. So when the new document came out, we found the need to create a system that honored the new document, but created stratification within 1L. And where that happened was actually in the third section in the document, ESL for All, where we had this continuum of literacy strategies. So that really what I did was I went through the continuum, pulled out all the little nuggets of brilliance, ran them through by our instructors, and put them into the 3 different levels we had in our 1L to sort of diagnose what are the specific learning strategies our learners need at those levels in order to succeed and move forward. So what does it look like to create a curriculum for literacy learners? It looks like collaborate. I had my own research that informed the work I did, but that was just the first initial stage. Where it really came to life was then piloting the different materials with our literacy instructors, having them use them in the classes, observing the classes, and then working with them to modify as needed. And then going back and forth like that over a good, I'd say 6 months of piloting we did, and tweaking and shifting to make sure that the curriculum we were developing was really meeting the needs of our learners. One of the main values that we really have at ISANS is autonomy. In our case here, learner autonomy, but ISANS is a full service settlement agency. So we have employment, we have counseling, we have housing, and then we have the learning. And through all those different parts of our organization, it sort of prioritizing autonomy of our clients is super important. So that extends to learning. What I really find is when you're able to prioritize learning strategies in a literacy class, you're really getting to the nugget of what it means to teach literacy, which is not just only the language learning, but learning how to learn. What are the tools you need as a learner in order to successfully progress through your, I like to call, language learning journey? So the strategies are beautiful because these are the tools that our learners can sort of slowly, and it is slow because it's literacy, but slowly work towards and keep in their tool belt, to help them become autonomous learners, confident learners, and confident. That confidence in language learning really does extend towards confidence and autonomy in their day-to-day lives outside of the classroom.
Oh, great. Vanessa, I just wanted to ask a question about regarding the continuum of literacy skills for both reading and writing. When you were going through the process of collaborating and creating the curriculum guidelines, were you taking what is quite general in the back of the document to some degree and making it a lot more specific, like in terms of specific activities or ways that you would demonstrate or teach or give learners a chance to practice the skills that are in the latter half of the book?
Yes and no. So what we really developed was kind of a checklist. And in a similar way that you'd see in the mainstream Canadian language benchmark book, you have sort of the skills, but also some example tasks that would go along. So we did a similar thing. I wanted to keep everything familiar to the instructors. The instructors have so much on their plates. So I didn't want to change the format too radically from what they were already used to working with. So what I did was I took that sort of more generalized learning strategy, reading or writing, and we would then give sort of a specific example of what that would look like as a task-based, within a task-based, what am I trying to think here? Within a task. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that then became part of the instructors' assessments, part of their daily teaching practice, and part of their planning, the three sort of areas: planning within the classroom, and then assessments. Those strategies became sort of prioritized, not higher than the language learning, but in an equal setting.
Okay, Vanessa, could you tell us, with this curriculum that you're working on, can you tell us the different components that are involved in it?
Absolutely. So the curriculum guideline has a number of sort of different documents within it. So it starts with an introduction of the guiding principles behind the curriculum itself. I don't want an instructor to go into it without a clear sense of where we're coming from, what our teaching philosophies are, that and everything that has gone into informing the document itself. Then we have a series of checklists that take place between, there are 4 separate levels. The first is foundation. And then we have 3 separate levels at 1L. We have 1L learn, 1L use, and 1L show. So those are our 3 distinct elements of 1L. And within our organization, those are 3 separate class levels that the learners are progressing through. So those checklists are reading, writing, and numeracy, and they include the skills, but also the learning strategies within the checklists. We have a more robust checklist, and then we have a condensed checklist. The condensed checklist is what the instructor is using sort of every day. And then the longer checklist is one, if they have a learner who isn't progressing and seems to be flagging or not thriving in some way, they can go through the longer, more detailed checklist. Maybe there's something within there that they can kind of diagnose as a learning gap. But we didn't also want to overwhelm the instructors with, a checklist is great for its brevity, right? It's a kind of a genre of resource.
Exactly.
So because I wanted the curriculum guidelines to be easy to use for the instructors, I then adapted the listening and speaking at CLB1 and CLB2 into a similar checklist. And I adapted this from the Canadian Language Benchmarks mainstream book, right? There, the mainstream one. And the reason I did this was simply for an ease of not having to rifle through a series of different resources when you're planning a class, delivering the lessons, and assessing, creating your assessments. I wanted one document that the instructors could just use as their guide, so they're not flipping back and forth. So the listening and speaking simply translates the listening and speaking from the mainstream CLB document into a checklist that the instructors can use in their planning. After that, we have our expanded checklists for those people who like a lot of detail. And then the kind of fun thing we have is a series of I can statements. So these are a version of the can do statements that you would have for mainstream. We changed the wording there to I can, just for simplicity's sake, because it's an easier concept to understand. So these are a simplified version of the checklists in plain language. If you're looking at a foundation learner, it might still be too complicated, but you're on the way to it being a more comprehensible sort of phrase or idea of what it is the instructor is looking for from the learners. That simplified language is meant to be used as a bridge, but also a tool for the instructors to connect with their learners. So those are the components of the guidelines themselves. There's also supporting documents in a series of themes at all 4 levels, in all 4 skills, that show you an example of how you can use the guidelines to plan, deliver, and assess. So there's all sorts of great, yummy documents that you can use in there for teaching and assessing, and assessment templates that really just, they're a great way to get used to learning how to use the strategy focused curriculum guidelines, but they're also they're a way of demonstrating how to use them to plan your teaching.
Okay, Vanessa, I have so many questions. Can we ask
Yes,
a few before we can you I'm not sure if when you were referring to learner autonomy, if that is the guiding principle, but could you elaborate on the guiding principles of the document?
absolutely. Learner autonomy is the guiding principle of
Okay.
the document, and that's in line with what we do within our language program, but also as a larger organization. So, what I want as an instructor is to teach my learners how to become their own teachers in a way. I know that's hard to sort of envision sometimes when you think about literacy, but I want my learners to know where to find resources. I want them to know how to ask for help. I want them to know that they can trust themselves as learners to make decisions and trust themselves to take language risks. So, all of those components are really, really important to me as an instructor. And they have been for years. And so, the opportunity to work on the curriculum was a chance to sort of forefront learner autonomy for literacy instructors. Um, except for the really great TELS course we offer, there aren't a lot of places to learn how to be a literacy instructor. It's its own kind of teaching. It's its own sort of world of teaching, and it can be really challenging to jump into it, coming from mainstream or coming as a new instructor. So I
Oh, yes.
really wanted the guidelines to be a gentle introduction to a philosophy of teaching that isn't simply language skill, language skill, language skill, language skill. Because I think a lot of new instructors come in and that's what the focus is. And with a literacy class, depending on the particular demographic and their strengths and their educational history, focusing on the skills is going to get you nowhere because of the way our learners learn and because of a huge variety of factors that underlie their sort of like their position within an education system. Many of them are starting fresh. This is their first experience. Many of them have had really negative experiences in the past. And many of them have had very interrupted experiences with, a little like a casserole of educational experiences over their lives.
Mhm.
So they're bringing such a different learning experience than you would find in a mainstream class. So it takes a very particular kind of teaching. And for me, the kind of teaching it requires is one that really, really prioritizes getting that confidence up for those learners. And the way that happens is teaching them the skills they need to become autonomous learners.
That's really interesting. And Vanessa, I want to go back to one thing that you had said a little bit earlier when you describing it. You had said that CLB 1L or the 1L learners would be split into 3 different groups. Can you give us a little bit of the background on why you chose to put 3 different groups for that level? Like, are there specific elements of like learning strategies that are really important when they start to transition at that level? Or is it to do with reading or writing? Like, why did you guys choose 3 levels at the 1 level?
Well, a variety of reasons, but the main and simplest one is that's what we were already doing. So if you go back to the old uh, literacy document from the CCLB, that's how it was organized. You had phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. And within phase 1, you had initial, phase 1 developing, phase 1 adequate. And it's not an exact at all translation from phase 1 initial into a CLB1. But there are similarities. And we had, for decades, had this program that had phase 1 split into these 3 levels that were pre-existing from the CLB. So we have quite a few of our learners who are coming to us within the foundation or 1L level. We actually have enough right now that we have, well, I can talk about this a little bit more later, but even within our literacy program, we have 2 streams of literacy classes right now. So we have quite a big literacy cohort within that 1L. So the challenge, when the new literacy document came out, the ESL for All, if suddenly we go from a system where we have this stratification, where learners are taking years to move through because they are coming, many of whom who are coming with very limited educational experience, they're all suddenly going to be in the same pot, in the same class. And we're going to have folks who are, working on initial phonics and people who can write and read sentences in the same class. So we very much needed to create that same distinction that allowed for a progression of learning within 1L for us. So when we named the levels learn, show, and use within 1L, to me that really does represent how a learner would move through 1L. At first, they're at the learning stage where it's a lot of new information. They're learning the basics, right? The foundations, for lack of a better word. Then they move to be able to show their work with more confidence, right? They can retain what they've learned and start to show that they've retained it and show that they can maybe transfer, let's say, for an example, between themes, transfer writing your name on a form for an application for a job and writing your name on a form for an apartment application, that kind of transfer. Can our learners start to show us that they have the sort of the cognitive wheels are turning enough that, okay, I understand this, I've learned the basics, the foundations, now I can show what I've learned. Finally, to use, where that idea of transferring the skills and the strategies across the different elements of their life, the different themes, once they show us that they can use those skills and use them autonomously, that's what we really need, because we have no 2L at ISANS. We have mainstream. So our learners are graduating out of our literacy program into mainstream. So that's why we have them so focused on their strategies. We want them to go with confidence into that mainstream. And usually they do. If you're teaching, I recently taught a CLB2 mainstream class. When you have those former literacy learners in there, they are the strongest learners because they've been in the program for a long time, but they have such developed learning strategies.
Wow.
And the instructors really have worked through their gaps that, they're really strong. It usually does take, maybe a few years to move through our literacy program. But the reason for that is because we want to make sure those learners are well-rounded in terms of their learning strategies before they move to the mainstream.
It sounds idyllic, perfect, but I know that there's going to be coordinators listening or program planners, and I know what they're going to ask. So, are you benchmarking, because it is PBLA, right?
Yeah. Oh,
So,
yeah.
what if they're in level literacy 1, going through 3 different phases? Are you addressing all skill areas in each level, and are you allowed to benchmark? And could you tell us a little bit about
Oh,
how that
yes,
works?
absolutely. So, yeah, we still align with the benchmarks. And so what we do for the listening and speaking, it's same teacher. It's the same as for our mainstream, right? They're working with mainstream listening and speaking because, they have those strategies already. They've been
Right.
listening and speaking their whole lives, and so they can already rely on that. And usually they're quite strong in their listening and speaking. So, for example, I'm teaching a 1L show right now. And while my learners are within the 1L for their reading and writing. There are 2s and 3s, and even in some cases a 4 with their listening and speaking, usually quite high. So what we do is we benchmark within the 1L at our different levels. So we're progressing them through slowly, moving them from learn to show to use within that 1L. I don't
Okay,
know
so
what
it's
kind of magic our coordinators and administrators specifically used within how that is translated in reporting. I know there is a way it is translated in reporting.
yes,
Yes.
I want some of that magic or access to it somehow. It sounds fantastic. I just have one more question before I let you go on here, Vanessa. You said you have 2 different streams within the literacy.
Yes, this is
Is
new. This is within
uh,
the last year, and of course, because of COVID, um, it's changed within the last 6 months of teaching. But so this is pretty exciting. What we did was when we started implementing the strategy-focused literacy curriculum, it suddenly became really clear that one of the hurdles we'd run across for years and years was that some literacy learners progress faster than others.
mhm.
And so once we really sort of prioritized the strategies, it became clear that, okay, some of our learners have better strategies that they're bringing with them already. And some of them have strategy gaps that they really, really need to develop. So what we did was we sort of took the literacy stream and divided it in 2. So we have the regular literacy stream and then a strategy focused literacy stream. And our learners who need the more robust strategies before they can move to that stream so that those instructors are placing an even greater emphasis on the learning strategies. And this really solved kind of a problem of, and I mean, you're going to have this in any language class really, where your learners are moving at slightly different speeds. Because ISANS has continual enrollment, we don't have semesters, we don't have a specific amount of time that a learner is in a class. You don't want a learner languishing in a class. You want them thriving. So by creating this strategy focused, I mean, both literacy classes focus on strategies, but the strategy focused one, you're creating an environment where those learners can really start to thrive and get all those tools they need to be successful language learners. Yeah, and it's been working really well. It kind of solved some problems for us that you almost didn't realize you had, or you didn't know what the solution was till something suddenly becomes clear and light bulb moment.
It's so fantastic when you have enough students in your program to be able to do these sort of things, right? You have a real luxury over there for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And yes, and I mean, I think also the luxury of having had this program. I mean, ISANS is celebrating its 40th year this year. And there have been literacy learners within our language classes for all of those years, right? We maybe called them something different 40 years ago, but it's a small organization because we're a small province, but it's a really tight-knit organization with there hasn't been a lot of there's a lot of institutional memory, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't had people come in and then leave and come in and then leave. A lot of the foundational people from ISANS have stuck around for better or worse. For us, it's sort of not a cult, but you get really, really invested because you can see the difference it makes, right? And it is a very tight-knit organization. So there's also that, which I really do need to acknowledge, that there's not only the breadth of the students that we have in terms of our literacy learners, but there's the depth of time that we've been working and sort of honing these, not only our own values as instructors, but our routines and the way we deliver things. It's been a long road for us, and we're really lucky that we can sort of draw on all the expertise that came before.
That's so great that you guys have such a great like organizational ethos, so to speak, when it comes to literacy and literacy learners. And you can see why, how that kind of builds into, moving forward in terms of what you just did, what you just talked about. And in, I forget what you called it, but the different levels of the literacy streams.
Yeah, so the two streams of the streams, I guess.
Okay.
Don't cross streams is a joke we've definitely done to death. But
No, that's so great. And I wanted just to go kind of circle back to the practical element of it. And what does it look like for you to like integrate those learning strategies in classroom teaching? Would you be able to give us like an example
absolutely,
or two?
yes. So the way that we really started to integrate them, because when you have sort of a philosophy of learner autonomy, the important thing is to make sure the learners understand why you're doing something. You're not just going to throw in starting to use strategies and not sort of forefront that this is something you're doing. So at the same time, it's such a hard concept to describe to learners, right? So what it really entailed was kind of a 6-month, 8-month, 9-month slow rolling of introducing the strategies through I can statements. So where you have the really clarified, simplified language of this is going to help me learn, and this is going to help me learn faster, and this is going to help me remember what I learned. So I'll give you an example here. And I can explain how we go about this because, of course, it is PBLA, and so we have a whole different way that we used in terms of introducing the strategies where the learners got to choose which ones they wanted to focus on. But I can come back to that later. I'll give a concrete example here. Here are a couple examples of I can statements. I can point to or circle important information in a sentence. I can follow my teacher's model to put words in the right boxes. I can check the model to see if my copying is correct. So if we take that third one, I can check the model to see if my copying is correct. The instructor would talk about why we do this, give a whole bunch of really tangible examples, right? Show it on the board, do an example where the instructor doesn't check the model, makes a mistake, and points out, good, mistake? Oh, yes, mistake. Right where? Oh, how do I fix it? Look at the model. Do this over and over again until, right, the learners are like, yes, check the model, check the model. And then usually, or what I like to do, or what I recommend, is to have that up on the classroom wall as a resource. And every single time you have an activity where you check a model to see if your copying is correct, you don't just sort of copy and then let the teacher see correct, not correct. No, you need to check yourself. Check to see if you're correct. Every time that comes up, which is undoubtedly 5-6 times in a class, the instructor goes over and points to that on the wall and says, right? Did we do this? Yes, no.
Mm-hmm.
And then the learners you can just watch them. They start looking up to that themselves, right? And looking up, and then maybe you add a second one to the wall, right? And you don't want to overwhelm. You don't want to have too many strategies at once. But within the classroom, if the learner can start self-actualizing that strategy, right? Using it to help themselves just by repetition. I mean, that's our mantra in literacy, right? Repetition, repetition, repetition.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just for skills. If we can get that repetition of strategies for the learners, they're suddenly going to have that in their tool belt for their whole learning journey, right? That's what we want them leaving our literacy program with. Oh, okay, I checked the model. And so that's why you have some of these former literacy or, our graduated literacy learners in level 2 always having correctly copied something as an example, right? Because that's become so ingrained in their learning strategies that it almost becomes instinctual.
I'm putting that up in my class tomorrow, Vanessa. I think all literacy teachers can attest to the fact that when students are finished something, they're like, teacher, teacher, teacher. They want you to check and confirm for them it's okay. So if they learn to check the model against their own work, they're learning a skill that's going to help the classroom run better, their
Mhm.
lives easier. I
And
love it. I'm
it's that
putting that one up.
confidence, right? The confidence
Mhm.
that you can check your own work and assess whether that's correct or not. A lot of literacy learners come to us with a lack of confidence
Yes.
for a variety of reasons, for a huge variety of reasons. So that repetition also cements the idea like, oh, I checked, I am correct, I am correct. If I'm not correct, I know how to fix it, right? Suddenly that's that nugget of confidence that they can take with them. And they can take that with them outside of the classroom, right? They can take
Yes.
that with them as they're actually doing tasks, filling in forms, for example. Um, they can feel a confidence, let's say, filling in a form for recreation, signing their kid up for swimming lessons, and maybe looking at their driver's license for their, for their address, as an example. They can trust themselves to do that because they've learned that within the language classroom, and they learned that that is a way to sort of operate successfully and have these successful communication events, as we like to say, outside the classroom.
Very nice.
Yeah, that's so great because it's something that we do and we absolutely take for granted. We might plan to go to a party and then we're like, oh, I better check online and make sure that it's the right time. Where our students are often, if they don't know, they'll either make the mistake or they'll ask the teacher. And for them to be able to do it themselves,
Yeah.
that's the most empowering thing, right?
And a lot of my learners over the years have sort of expressed this sort of, no one ever asked them, depending on what their situation is coming. But for example, some of our Bhutanese or Nepali clients, they grew up in a refugee camp and no one really asked them to be responsible for a lot of the things that we take for granted. That, it's my responsibility to make sure I'm on time for this. It's my responsibility to make sure I've spelled my child's name correctly. And so a lot of my learners over the years have expressed that, oh, I didn't even know this was something I could do, right? That I can be responsible for checking all this information. And it's really empowering to sort of have that
Absolutely.
light bulb moment. Of course, all of our learners come from different situations, and that's not necessarily going to be across the board. But you need that. I feel like if we can diagnose where those gaps are, we can really help empower those learners, sort of, and then they can move more quickly through the language program, whereas before maybe they were languishing. Yeah.
You just made me think of my Bhutanese students. I was off in memory lane there for a while. Yeah. Um, it's amazing what the resiliency that people come here with, and are just able to make it. And it's
Well, and
awesome.
you know what, Donna, to that point, one of the reasons we had these condensed checklists and then these expanded checklists was because of the way we see our literacy sort of demographics change over the years, depending on what's happening in the world and where people are coming from and what their experiences are. We created the condensed checklist to meet our current demographic of learners' needs, but we also wanted to have something more detailed for, let's say, in 5-10 years, we have a slightly different demographic of literacy learner that we might need to rejig that condensed checklist. They might have different literacy needs than our current demographic does. So that's also something that we really, I think it came through the benefit of being around for so long. We've seen the changes in our learners, our literacy learners, as the decades have gone on, and seen that they come with different needs and different strengths. And so we want to be able to respond in an agile way, to the particular demographic.
I've been through a few different phases of immigration as well, so I know exactly what you're referring to. Um, so I've bought into all of this, Vanessa. I want it. Where do I get it? Like, what kinds of supporting materials exist? How can I embrace these ideas that you're talking about here today?
It makes it sound like a cult. No, okay.
The best kind of cult, I think. The best kind.
Okay, so I have a nice simple answer for you.
Good.
All of the documents and the supporting documents are on Tutela. So if you're already a member of Tutela, they're under a collection. The collection's name is ISANS Literacy Curriculum Guidelines. And then you have the foundation and 1L supporting documents there as well. If you're not a member of Tutela, all you need to do is sign up for the free membership. There's, reams of resources on there, but it's all available there in PDF. So you can use it if there's ever anything you want to rejig, play around with, not have it in a locked PDF, I encourage people to send me an email and I can send them the Word document, because I know instructors like to play around with things and,
Absolutely.
rejig them and make them useful to them as well. So if anyone gets in there and says, "Ooh, I wish I could get in here and just, shift out this image for this image, or use specific, there's a few things in there that are Halifax or Nova Scotia specific, switch them in, switch them out." The supporting documents also include book folds that align with the classroom materials. And we have them in the summer theme, education theme, and Canada theme.
I've got
Yes.
it here on my computer.
Yeah. And you know what? There's also, just to sort of plug something else that came out, one of our developers, our curriculum developers here, Sarah Sampara, has a document on Tutela about curriculum development, specifically for EAL. So how to create curriculum for EAL, and that's also on there
Oh, wow.
as a great little resource that's on there. Yeah, I love Tutela, but it's all there. And if anyone has any questions, feel free, please, please, please. I love talking about literacy. Send me an email. I could do it till I turn blue in the face.
Vanessa, given the current climate that we obviously find ourselves in, we've noticed a lot of people talk about digital literacy and how it's made teaching online quite difficult for literacy learners, is obviously at the foundation and 1 and 2 levels. Could you tell us a little bit maybe about how some of the, not necessarily digital literacy strategies, but some of the explicit strategies that you're talking about, how are they being taught remotely during COVID? Or do you have any advice for that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was a bit of trial and error at first, but for sure. Really, it's translated fairly well. And not a lot has had to change in terms of the explicit strategies. You still sort of, it almost becomes more personalized, because what we've done thus far with our learners is do one-on-one lessons. So it's actually been quite a good opportunity to pinpoint even further and more specific those strategies for that particular learner. And again, you don't focus on too many at one time. It's just overwhelming. So it really has depended. Has the instructor, is this a class they had before COVID? Are these learners that they're really, really familiar with? Or is it a new instructor that's come in? In most cases for our literacy, it's the same instructor. So they already have a really great sense of what that learner needs in terms of their strategies. So it's just been an opportunity to kind of like, you kind of wish you had it before, like, oh, if only I could get this student one-on-one and kind of just really work on this 1-2 strategies that maybe they're focused on. It's been a bit of an opportunity. And if you had asked me this time last year, can you move a literacy program online? I would have laughed and just shook my head and said, how? But actually, it's been really successful. Once we got past the technological part of getting our learners using some sort of mobile device, we've been using WhatsApp. And actually, a couple of our instructors have a webinar on Tutela about using WhatsApp with literacy learners. Yes, I can send you the link after. The other thing that's been really interesting is thinking through what it means to teach digital skills explicitly. And suddenly it was something we always thought about doing before, but never really had there were so many needs that came before that. So what we've done is really, really focus on teaching learning strategies for online learning. This can include everything from knowing how to hold the camera or the phone or whatever device they're using to take a clear picture of the work they're doing to send to their instructor, to, maybe wear a shirt, right? Or just like things that, again, you take for granted when you think, okay, well, if I'm learning online, these are sort of the standards I should have. Your literacy learner might not understand that maybe you should be dressed or not chewing gum, or, right? Like really specific elements. I shouldn't be driving. I shouldn't be driving and smoking and not wearing a shirt, right? Like all these things. But really, it has been how to turn the camera to front facing, how to turn it, right? All of these specific little discrete skills that are now translated into online learning. If this is going to be for the long term, for now, we want to make sure our literacy learners have a sense of how to do that. And it's been going really well. What we've done at ISANS is we have a bi-monthly mail out for each level. It's a 10-page learning package, and as well as a book fold. So within that learning package, we usually, or almost always, have a couple pages on specific digital learning strategies. So some sort of element of how to be a good learner online. Yeah, so it's been really interesting. The strategies have translated really well into personalized learning, and then suddenly you've had this opportunity to think through what it means to sort of develop some digital learning strategies.
Oh, fantastic. That's kind of parallels with what I'm a 3-4 literacy teacher, and that's kind of dovetailed with what I've experienced too. Like I spent a lot of time make sure we were good with Zoom and we were good with WhatsApp, and we knew how to maximize and minimize. And I mean, obviously we might not be doing all those things at the lower levels, but I feel like it's paid in dividends, later on in the term or the second semester. But I know we're kind of running low on time, Vanessa, and Donna has an important question to ask you. But just before that, I wanted to quickly ask you if someone is a new literacy teacher, or maybe even an organization that doesn't have a full-fledged literacy program, or even maybe one that does but wants to kind of take that next step into using a curriculum like the one you've developed. What do you think is the first step, or maybe a baby step that someone could take so they don't kind of feel overwhelmed by the vastness of the content?
Right, because yes, it's not something you can just sort of go by rogue and start implementing in your day-to-day teaching. I'd say the biggest takeaway and the biggest tool that you can use as an instructor is to go through the checklist for the learning strategies and think of maybe either you think holistically of your class. What is one thing that they struggle with? So choose one thing maybe, and then go through that checklist and think, is there a strategy that helps sort of meet the needs? Sometimes thinking backwards, right? I like to plan my courses backwards too, right? Okay, what's my outcome? Okay, so you can do that with a strategy and pick one or two. Just start with one or two. It doesn't need to be a whole bunch at once. Pick one or two strategies you think your class as a whole, or if you're, an online instructor, you're working one-on-one with that one learner, what will they benefit from in terms of a strategy that will help them become autonomous? So it could be something as what seems like it's simple, but it's not simple. Something as simple as informing the instructor when you don't understand something, right? That's one of the strategies we work with, because it can be really overwhelming for a learner to admit that they don't understand something, and it can be really empowering to then understand that that's something they can ask. So choose something like that and then introduce it to your learners really, really explicitly, and integrate it into your daily classroom practice in a way that you can easily do. It fits into what you're doing already. A lot of these strategies we're already kind of doing in certain ways. It's just putting a name and putting a structure to it. So choose something like that and think through what it means to teach it explicitly and bring your learners into understanding why they need to do this. We don't, our learners are adults and they follow the adult learning principles. They are motivated. They want to progress. And adults have a certain logic system where they want to understand why they're doing something. So if we can help clarify why we're asking them to do something, not just sort of ask them to do it, and then just follow through. If they can understand why they're being asked to do something, they're going to be way more receptive to doing it.
Absolutely.
So start with one or two strategies. Work it into your class. You might fail, and that's okay. And that is idea of failure is within the curriculum itself in the introduction, saying it's okay to try this and not quite get it on the first go. Like any literacy instruction, there's trial and error. So be patient with yourself and be patient with your learners, but it really, I can speak from experience, has paid dividends for our own learners and their progression and their confidence. It really has made a difference. Start small and then slowly build up with your comfort level the learning strategies for your learners. It becomes a kind of a structuring principle when you do integrate it. It becomes a structuring principle for the delivery of the material, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds to me like you're not just a 9 to 5 teacher.
Well, these days who knows what it is anymore.
Right. Well, we have a teacher who says she's 7-Eleven. 7-Eleven. Now she switched to 24 hours open.
I know, right?
Yeah. I forgot to prepare you. Sometimes we've done a few podcasts now, and I usually tell the person this question before, but I'm gonna pop this one on you,
Oh, do it.
Vanessa. And it's super interesting to me. I like to know sort of how people end up in literacy. And so the question is, why do you do what you do?
Well, funnily enough, I started as a volunteer in literacy in 2004. I sort of on a whim decided to volunteer with ISANS. And it just I ended up in a literacy class. I was doing a PhD at Dalhousie at the time, and I just wanted a little something, extra in my day-to-day life, add a little variety. And I ended up with the same class for about 6 years. I went through 2 different instructors, but with the same literacy class, once a week, 3 hours a week, and it became the highlight of my week. Really, it did. And then I went to the University of Alberta and was doing a postdoc, and I found myself really, really missing that class. And I kind of, through lots of, hard thinking about, where I was and where I wanted to be, I realized, I think I really want to teach literacy. And it was definitely a pivot in terms of I had been working in Canadian modernist literature and digital humanities, but I really felt that hole in my life, and I realized how much that time in the literacy classroom meant to me. So I went back and I did a master's in education, and I knew I wanted to focus on literacy. I moved back to Halifax. I basically just told ISANS, please let me do my practicum here. And they knew me. So they placed me with Setsu Kawahara, who was sort of our guru, our literacy guru. And I finished my degree, and I just started on small contracts and subs. And then I ended up getting a really interesting contract as sort of a literacy aide within the literacy classrooms. So I got to move through all the different classrooms as an assistant to the other literacy instructors, and which was such a huge bonus because I got to watch all these different seasoned instructors teach literacy in their own specific ways. And I just gained so much knowledge during that. And then I went away on maternity leave, and I got a little email. Ooh, there's an opening. I left my maternity leave early. I do love my children, but my husband took the rest of the parental leave, and it's kind of been my passion ever since. And I was lucky enough to do the curriculum work for a couple years, and now I did miss the learner, so I'm happy to be back now online, which is so funny with the literacy learners. But it really is my passion, and it was such a pleasure to be able to work on the curriculum because I got to work with the instructors as our literacy program grew, and helped shape how we deliver our lessons, and it's just been such a pleasure. So definitely, it's been a long road since 2004, but it's been a strangely very clear path for me. I knew exactly what I wanted to do when I decided to sort of pivot to EAL. I knew I wanted literacy. It's my favorite kind of teaching. I love the mainstream too, but there's something very, very particular about teaching literacy that just ticks all the boxes for me. And then I've been really lucky to facilitate our online course for instructors, TELS, and I get to meet lovely people like you, and I get to see how literacy works throughout the country. And yeah, we've had students in that class from all over Canada and all the territories and provinces. So you get to really get a sense of what's happening, and it helps you keep vital. And I've been lucky enough to present at different conferences as well. So slowly developing those networks where the more we can collaborate across the country, the better, because we have very similar learners. Our teaching contexts are different, but our learners, by and large, are very similar and have similar strengths and similar challenges.
Yeah, you touched on a little bit of, one of our goals for the Literacy Center of Expertise is to just sort of have a place or a hub where people doing all sorts of different things everywhere can share and go find out, because as you mentioned very early in the podcast, Vanessa, there's not a lot of places to go for training, for formal training. So we need to stop it reinventing the wheel and use what's there at ISANS and at Tutela and at the Edmonton Catholic School District, and put it all together in one place and learn and grow it together.
Absolutely, right? We have
Yeah.
such a wealth of knowledge and experience and materials. And it's just a matter of, bringing it all together and finding innovative ways to collaborate, like this podcast. What a great idea.
Thanks. Well, I hope that people listening who are not teachers or don't have experience with literacy, I hope everyone goes out and gets a little bit of volunteering experience with literacy, because I agree with you. Once you have interaction in those classrooms, for me, there was no going back. I knew that I found exactly where I was supposed to be.
Oh, I know, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
It's an honor to teach literacy.
Yes, I agree.
Well, thank you so much, Vanessa. Before we leave today, I'd like to ask you, maybe just give us a little bit of. You did say that there was going to be another TELS course that you facilitate. You said there's going to be another one coming up. Could you give us a little bit of information about that?
Absolutely. So TELS will be running in what we call our winter term. So between January, February, March, in those first months of 2021, we will be running TELS again. If you are interested in attending TELS, you can send an email to me, and our, you know what, Arlie, it runs it, but I know she's super busy right now. So maybe just send an email to me, and I can forward it and flag it for Arlie. But and also, I'll make sure that you guys on your Facebook group get the poster when we come out with it, which usually will be soon. Usually it's October or so, so that people can contact Arlie to get signed up for the course, because it's so fun. It's a great way to, meet other instructors around the country and sort of dig into some theory and some practical and bring it all together into your own practice. We like to make the course really, really applicable to whatever you're doing. So I really encourage my learners to develop materials within the course that they can then just take out and use and try right away. I always find that because it's one of the principles of adult learning, I like to apply it to my learners as well. But it's a great fun course. We always have, every year it's a great cohort, and you kind of think, you miss them all so much, because you get really sort of close and used to interacting during the 3 months of the course. But it's not too heavy a load, maybe about 8 hours a week, depending how long you spend on your assignments. But it's sort of been built slowly through a combination of things, but really the experience of the instructors at ISANS is the backbone of the course.
Yeah, I highly recommend taking the course. I mean, I've been 10 years working with mostly literacy learners. We've only had a dedicated literacy program for about 5 years now, but it just gave me lots of cause for thought and replanning and assessing what I was doing. And so whether you're a new teacher or an experienced teacher, I think it's a worthwhile course for sure.
Yeah, it's fun. We always have some aha moments. I love those.
Definitely.
Everyone's like, oh, yes, this.
Yeah, well, if anybody is looking for any feedback from students, they're welcome to contact Donna and I, because we both took it and enjoyed it a lot. I know for me, the learning strategies unit was my favorite and the most important for me. So, which is, kind of connected to what you talked about today. So,
absolutely.
All right. Well, Vanessa, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your knowledge and your passion. And we're so lucky in the literacy community to have you. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Oh, thank you guys so much. This has been a treat, a great way to end out the week. Have a big old chat about literacy. It's hard in these days. You don't get as much time to sort of just chat with your colleagues, right? So it's nice to get that opportunity, and I just love what you guys are doing out there. So way to go.
Thanks, Vanessa. Thank you.
Well, that concludes episode 4 of the Literacy Center of Expertise podcast. Thank you again to our guest, Vanessa Lent, and to everyone out there for listening. If you are interested in being a guest on the podcast, please contact us at www.immigrant-education.ca/literacy-center/contact. Again, that's www.immigrant-education.ca/literacy-center/contact. Until next time.